In this day and age, finding happiness is not always easy. It can be difficult for some and even more troublesome for others. But one thing we can all agree on is that falling in love is easy. It's letting go that is the hardest part. I'm not gonna sit here and tell you I've never liked anyone, as that would be a lie. I have. Did they like me back? I don't know, and I may never know. The thing about falling in love is, if you don't act, you react. If you think, you overthink. So here I ask, what does it mean to fall in love?
If you can't tell, it's Valentine's Day. Yay! Yeah. The one time of the year that you really do wish you had someone to call yours. I mean, I don't know if you have someone or if you don't have someone, but I don't have anyone, so I'm single. Yay. What better way than to talk about one of my favorite romance series ever. No, not Kaguya-sama. Despite me really loving this series, we're gonna be talking about one of my other favorite romance series, that being Nisekoi False Love. It's essentially the story about trying to fall in love. For being what it is, I think it stands out in this genre. It's honestly done pretty well for the most part. And today we're gonna be talking about Nisekoi False Love and what it means and what it represents. Essentially, it represents what it means to fall in love. Okay, but before I begin discussing Nisekoi in further detail, I really just want to tell you a simple tale between a boy and a girl and what went wrong. So the story goes, there were these two friends. They weren't necessarily close to each other at first. Sure, they had gone to the same school together and they had glanced at one another while walking through the hallways, and at some point they had formally been introduced through one another through a mutual friend. They had started talking, and as the months progressed and as the school year went by, they started to get a little bit closer and hang out. Suddenly, the boy realizes this was the first girl he had ever gotten to know on a personal level. They even had gotten a job together nearby the school. That's when everything started to deteriorate and their friendship shifted, as the girl he had gotten close with started to talk to someone else and slowly forget about him. Without his knowledge, he could only wonder what had happened, why she had abandoned him, and then it hit him. He had started to realize he had feelings for this girl, his friend, yet it was too late to do anything about it. He was too nervous to confess and lost his chance, his opportunity. So he waited patiently for his friend to talk to him, yet nothing ever came out of it. It's as if she had forgotten about him entirely, and as time went on the outside he seemed okay, but on the inside he was torn apart like a rag doll, as he had never made his move. The boy had eventually graduated, but he was always torn apart and had wondered things. Had things been different had he confessed his feelings? Sure, it may have or may not, but even so, he could only speculate on how different his life would be had he asked. Now, while that sounds like a really sad and tragic story, it's very much similar to the story of Nisekoi False Story. The only difference is the girl, or should I say girls, like the protagonist back, and he's too dense to even realize it. So what happens when someone likes you, but you don't know what to do? Now, if you're not too familiar with the premise of Nisekoi, or it's just been a while since you've read it, then let me explain. So in this series, we follow the main protagonist named Raku Ichijo. He is head heir to the Yakuza clan, and in order to prevent a massive gang war between the Yakuza and their rival clan known as the Beehive, he must pretend to be in a
relationship with the next heir in line. This just so happens to be a classmate of his named Chitoge Kirisaki. The problem is that they despise, and I mean despise one another. When they first meet, they try to pick a fight with one another. However, they ultimately come to the agreement that they will pretend to be lovers at least till they graduate from high school. And this actually comes as a surprise for them because they have to be in a relationship for at least another 2 years. But it's not like they'll actually fall in love. They're just doing it because they have to, right? Right? Well, that's exactly what happens, and it's interesting as Ichijo is slowly falling for Chitoge, and she's also falling for him as well. The thing is, she's not the only one that likes him, as one of his childhood friends, Onodera Kosuke, really loves him, but is too shy to say anything or even do anything about it. There's also a few other characters who do eventually fall for him, such as Chitoge's bodyguard Seishiro Tsugomi, as Ichijo is the first guy to ever view her as a woman. This turns her from a stone cold bodyguard to a very tsundere type of girl who wants him and his attention. That's not the end of it, as there's a few other girls that like him, but the most important one out of those is a girl named Marika Tachibana, a girl he had made fall for him when they were children. There's a lot, and I mean a lot of romance involved. I'm not sure I'll be able to talk about it all, but I will try. Regardless, the story is mainly centered on 3 characters, those being Raku Ichijo, Chitoge Kirisaki, and Onodera Kozuki. While the other girls do have prominent roles in this series, they don't end up with him, or they either end up admitting defeat, or they just end up realizing that Ichijo doesn't want them, which is sad, but it's ultimately for the best. Now this love triangle, or pentagon as I prefer to call it, is rather interesting, as each girl has something that they adore about him. Something about him just causes people to fall for him. You want to know something far more interesting? Is that he's actually childhood friends with all of them, and he had made a promise with one of them to be with. Now with the revelation of this, he has to figure out who he made a promise with. Yet he realizes, does that promise even mean anything if he likes someone standing in front of him in the here and now? Does the promise determine his future, or do his own feelings? Determining your future based on a promise is honestly just a very silly concept, right? It's similar to those people who claim they'll be able to tell your future just by reading the palm of your hand or just by reading a tarot card. It's very, very silly, as that's not how the future works. However, to these characters, it's not silly. It's not as simple as that. As they grew up with one another, they were childhood friends. They know this, which is why it's ultimately very tragic when the promise girl is revealed and that promise means absolutely nothing. With the revelation of the promise girl, well, I'm not gonna spoil it, as I want you guys to read it rather than me tell you, but I do want to say best girl does win, so I'll let you figure that out. However, when it comes to deciding who you want to be with, it's not as simple as just picking and choosing, as you have to consider the other person's feelings and how you feel about them. Take for example Marika Tachibana. Sure, she's very much obsessed with Ichijo, as he's the one that gave her the courage and the strength to move on and heal from a disease that had been inflicting her since she was a child. Does she only love him because she gave her the strength to move on and be who she is? From the very introduction of her character, she admits, "I want to be with you, please be with me." However, Ichijo doesn't really feel the same for her. So is it wrong if he ends up deciding to be with her simply because she's not feeling well, simply because she's a sick girl, or simply because they made a promise to marry one another? Is it? Another character I found rather interesting is the case of Seishiro Tsugomi, who is Chitoge's bodyguard and ultimately her first friend. However, those around her view her as a man, since her appearance is
not too feminine. She comes off as a bit masculine. However, upon meeting Ichijo, he is the first person to ever acknowledge her as a woman, and this rattles something up inside of her because he cares about her not just as a person but as a friend, and something inside her starts to boil up and she starts to change herself in hopes for him to acknowledge him. Yet the problem with this is, as much as she wants him, she can't really be with him, as her best friend Chitoge likes him and she knows this. So what should she do? Should she simply just give up because of her best friend's feelings, or should she pursue her own? You know, Chitoge Kirisaki, she's a pretty interesting case, and honestly she's one of my favorite characters, as I adore everything about her, from her personality to her quirks. I might be a bit biased saying this, but honestly, for me, I think she's a really good fit for him. Sure, they're forced to be with one another for the sake of peace and longevity between their families, yet all the time that she spends with him, she starts to fall for him and slowly change her viewpoint about him, from spending the day trying to find her lost ribbon, where Ichijo goes out of his way to search the entire town to return it to her, to them spending the night in a cabin on their school trip where she gets locked outside and she spends time with him. She slowly starts to develop feelings for him. However, what's the issue? Why can't she admit to herself that I like him? What is the problem? What is it? Lastly, we have everyone's favorite, at least everyone's favorite besides mine. We have Onodera Kosuki, the perfect girl. She's everything you could want. She's very wholesome and caring. She's not very good at cooking or baking, but she tries her very best. And she's had a crush on Ichijo from the very beginning. So why hasn't she made her move? Why? Is it because she's too nervous, too shy, or simply is she afraid to say anything? The problem with the series is that it gives you many options, and by far it's probably the best problem, as it makes it all that more memorable and heartbreaking having you choose your favorite only for them not to be chosen and they end up alone. It's very sad. Basically me in high school. However, all these characters are quite unique in their own regard and their own right. They all would have made the perfect match for Ichijo. The issue is that there can only be one person, which makes it all the more satisfying when he ends up with the person. Honestly, what makes the series pretty unique, at least for me, is the dynamic between all these characters and how they all share. The chemistry that they all share is honestly very fun and gives off this good type of atmosphere. When said characters are feeling down, you feel for them, as the story has progressed to a point where you have grown an attachment to them. You, as a reader, feel them and you want to comfort them. However, you're just unable to. If they feel sad, if they feel happy, you feel happy for them because you've grown an attachment to these characters. So yeah, that was basically my Valentine's Day special. If you can't tell, I really didn't go too much into depth about the story of Nisekoi. I didn't go into major plot details or major character motivations. Why is that? It's because I just really don't want to spoil anything for you guys. In my previous videos, I have spoiled some of the story and I do want to apologize for that. So going forward, I'm gonna try my best to avoid giving spoilers regarding certain settings and certain story unless it's necessary for the video that I'm discussing. So hopefully you guys like this video a bit better than my other videos, just because I avoided as much spoiling about the plot, because I'm not here to tell you the entire story. I want you guys to go watch it, to go support the creator, to go read the manga, to go watch the anime. Oh yes, go support the series. It really means a lot to these authors who create these type of works. And for me, Nisekoi, it's really one of my favorite series. It's something, like I mentioned, that I just kind of relate to. Like, it's something that caught my attention, it piqued my interest. And Valentine's Day to me is one of those times of year that makes it feel kind of cringe, kind of lonely, I guess. I don't know, but with that being said, Nisekoi, I really adore this story, but what did you guys think of Nisekoi? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What are you doing for Valentine's Day today? Are you gonna go read Nisekoi, or what are you gonna do exactly? Anyways, I know what I'm gonna be doing. I'm gonna go watch Kaguya-sama, The First Kiss Never Ends, or something like that. I'm gonna go watch the Kaguya movie right now. And yeah, with that being said, be sure to be on the lookout for my Kaguya film review. I'll be posting that a few days after today's video because I want to give you guys a chance to go watch this film before I go into my spoiler video. So anyways, with that being said, yeah, happy Valentine's Day. I hope you guys really like this video. I put a lot of work and thought into this. Anyways, I'll see you in my next video pretty soon. So yeah, let's go watch Kaguya-sama. Yeah!